Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to explain South Indian movie Kantara, released in the year 2022. Spoiler alert. The movie opens with the tale of a king who makes great efforts to find happiness and tranquility in his castle but is unsuccessful. He finally decides to embark on a pilgrimage to look for the same. He encounters a deity in the form of a stone. When he learns that the deity Panjurli is what he needs to find happiness, he drops his sword. The possessed performer advises the king to bring Villege deity along with him along with Panjurli deity, as he asks the locals to assist him in carrying this stone back to his palace. He also makes it clear that Panjurli is forgiving, but backing out on the exchange terms would mean Village's unforgiving wrath would befall them. The king agrees to these conditions. In 1970, the king's successor asks a Buddha Kola performer, who is possessed by Panjurli, to make the locals hand over the land to him, which the performer refuses and states he will die vomiting blood if he tries to. The successor raises doubt on performer's possession by Panjurli, to which the performer replies he would vanish if he is possessed, after which he runs into the forest and is indeed never seen again. As warned, the king's successor dies mysteriously, vomiting blood a few months later on the steps of the court, where he was going to argue the land case. A few decades after the disappearance of the Kola performer, his son Shiva reappears as a Kambala athlete who has no desire to emulate his father. He indulges in alcoholic beverages, marijuana use, wild boar hunting, and other vices. He currently resides with his mother, uncle, and cousin, who is now in charge of serving as the Kola performer at each Buddha Kola festival. The landlord, a living descendant of the king, and the entire hamlet get along well with one another and with Shiva. A forest ranger named Murali was given the job of turning the villagers' land into a forest reserve in 1990. Shiva, a Kambala athlete from the Kadabeta village and the son of the missing star, challenges him, nevertheless. Shiva is supported by Devendra Saturu, the current king's successor and the village's landowner, who also serves as his sponsor. Shiva is frequently urged to do the Buddha Kola, but he consistently declines because of the trauma of his father's abduction. Guruva, his cousin, steps in to take his place. Shiva hires his buddy Leela as a forest guard after falling in love with her. He does this by using his contacts with landlord Devendra Saturu. Murali and his team beginning to build a fence along the designated forest reserve. The police and forest guards, including Leela, ruthlessly suppress the villagers' attempts to stop the fencing, causing a gap between Leela and Shiva despite the fact that she was only following orders and helpless to stop the situation. Murali resolves to arrest Shiva and his pals as their dispute grows, and he travels to their hiding place with Devendra's goon Sudhakar. But, when chopping down a tree, Shiva and his companions accidentally wreck Murali's jeep, and believing they have killed everyone inside, they flee. A few days later, when they go back to the village to visit their family, Leela and Shiva reconcile, and Shiva informs Leela that he will submit. The following morning, though, police and forest guards apprehend them. The story starts unraveling further once he is behind bars. Devendra has some not-so-good intentions for the village. He tries to convince Guruva to relay the word of the god as wanting the villagers to sell their lands to him. When he refuses, Devendra stabs him and disposes of his body in the village. Elsewhere, Murali is having a discussion that it is necessary to cover the land to reserve forests soon enough, as Devendra has registered all of the lands under his name, and this could lead to the villagers getting exploited. Devendra comes to know of this. Raghav gets Shiva out on bail, but Devendra convinces him that he has ulterior motives behind this. He also instigates Shiva by lying to him that the person to kill Guruva is Muralidhar. Shiva is engulfed in a fit of rage, but he goes to meet the local blacksmith instead and does some recreational drugs for clarity. The man tells him that he saw Garuva with Devendra right before he was killed. Back in the village, the people have come to know Devendra's true nature. Shiva comes on the scene and informs them that he is also responsible for the death of Garuva. It is time for the final act, for the final battle. As Devendra comes armed and ready to take down everyone in his way. Devendra manages to kill Shiva, and the villagers lose all hope. But tides can turn anytime, sometimes for no other reason than to prove a miracle. Shiva has always had nightmares about a boar that attacks him as well as hallucinations about a god in the forest. But that day, he had conquered his fears. He was the descendant of the host of the god, and in times of need, he came to protect. The god possesses Shiva and wreaks havoc on the assailants. He kills Devendra and all of his henchmen, removing every obstacle to the village. A few months after the war, Shiva performs the Buddha Kola and is taken over by Panjurli. The Daiva brings together the hands of the villagers and the officials in a gesture telling them to protect the forest with each other's help. At that exact moment, he hears the scream from the forest and runs towards it. It is the scream of his long-lost father and God, who are one and the same as they have been for years later. They both meet again in the circle of fire and vanish without leaving a trace, as their job in the village is done. Years later, Shiva's son asks questions about his father's disappearance, and he gets a smile in return, maybe indicating that he is going to have a similar fate.